First I selected a site that I was going to build my GreenLoo on. I dug 6 holes that were 450 deep. In them I concreted 6 foundation poles. On top of them I placed some damp coarse paper and the bearers, and I strapped them down using galvanised straps and product nails. On these I placed the bearers, then on to framing up the chamber. Next, the cubicle floor joists were placed on top. Note how I've framed around the thrown hole. Then on to framing up the cubicle itself. Once all the framing was done, it was just a matter of nogging everything up. I haven't needed to put any diagonal bracing through the framing because the plywood cladding will brace the structure. Next it's onto the roof. First I laid a sheet of 8mm ply over the rafters, and then on top of that I laid the purlins. Note how I've boxed around the air vent so that it's supported. Then on comes the mesh, and over that is a layer of self-supporting builder's paper. Once that's on, it's a layer of corrugated iron screwed down with hex roofing screws. Notice how they're on every rise of the roof. That's to stop any rats or rodents getting into the cavities. Then it's on to cladding. Make sure the weather battens and the flashings that go round the doors and windows fit snugly and that the rain can't get in. As you can see, we worked from the top to the bottom as it was so high, using the chamber to support the scaffold. Onto the ramp. First we concreted 2 piles in, and then we slung the other end off the front of the cubicle using joist hangers. Onto the floor. I used some recycled tongue and groove that I had lying around. Normally I would have used a sheet of ply. Both the chamber and the cubicle had tongue and groove placed in it. In goes the chamber hatchway. I used weather strips to create a seal so that the air couldn't get through the door itself, and bungee cords were held secure. Next it was the job of jibbing. Once the jib had been put in both the cubicle and the chamber, stopped, sanded, it was ready for a coat of sealer and good paint. Onto the flue. I made the flue out of bits and pieces I had lying around. Fly mesh was placed in the flue joiner so that if any insects climbed down they couldn't get in. A Chinaman's cap from another chimney was placed on top of the black alkathene. I used the black alkathene so that it would be warmer at the top of the flue than at the bottom. This would encourage the flow of air going through the flue, bring the air into the chamber at the bottom. The alkathene pipe was then attached to the grey pipe and secured with galv wire strops. Here's the throne. This was made by a ceramicist as one of the first prototype GreenLoos. See the urine catcher from this photo here. This was placed in a frame which was in the cubicle. The throne itself was held by blocks that held it exactly over the hole cut in the floor. Having it in the box also stopped any movement on the pipes, so that ensured that it didn't leak inside the cubicle. Once in place, the top was sealed in with bathroom silicone sealant, and the pipe going through the cubicle into the chamber was also sealed so that the chamber was airtight. Next, it was onto the toilet seat and the fascia boards. All the fascia boards were made out of recycled kauri that I had lying around. And here is the toilet box completed. Next, it's the hand basin. The hand basin was made with old and new parts. First, I screwed the box onto the plywood back. Once that was done, I assembled the tap and the fittings. Then it was screwed on the side of the wall and the pipes attached to the throne. Toilet roll holder was added. Onto the drainage next. The drain was a serrated pipe with cuts in it, laid in a trench 300 deep, and a layer of gravel placed over it. The trench sidled along the hill so that it was level, and the flow of urinal was even. Once the gravel had been laid, it was a fine layer of earth over the top. The electrical system was a 6-volt deep cycle battery that sat under the building and was connected to two 6-volt lights, one on the inside and one on the out. Windows had their fascias placed on them and all the fittings placed. Again, this was recycled kauri. Good coating of linseed oil and a couple of good layers of beeswax polish. And there's the inside of the cubicle finished and ready to go. You see the path was cut and gravelled in. Now that the cubicle and chamber was finished, it was off to the composter. I made the composter out of mussel floats. I cut the ends off one of them to make a cylinder. Then I nailed a wooden frame and placed 2 layers of chicken mesh over the top. Next, I cut the top off another mussel buoy that was terminally damaged, sealed the hole in the end, and that was my lid. There is the composter ready to be taken up and placed in the garden. Make sure that you choose a sunny and well-drained site for your composter. Feces and sawdust goes down into a washing basket which is lined with newspaper. The flow of air going down through the toilet throne and up through the vent dries it and keeps it cool so that the bacteria can't multiply. The composting itself is done in a compost bin in your garden or wherever you want the compost to end up. So this means that when the basket starts to fill up, you have to go and empty it into the composting bin. So this is a short vid about how that goes. Open the hatch door and you'll see the two bins. One of the bins is the one that you have to change. Just like all toilets, it will need a good clean. In the sprayer is a liquid that has bacteria in it. It can be purchased easily enough as it's used on farms such as chicken farms to break down manure and in septic tank systems. The other essential ingredient is wood shavings or sawdust. Make sure that it is not tannalized. Once the full bin's out, throw a few handfuls of sawdust and carefully wrap the top newspaper down to form a bundle. Then take it and tip it into your composter, which should be on site. As you can see by the next photo, our compost is on top of a hill that is just about all clay and no topsoil. Once it's emptied, bring it back to the toilet. Now there needs to be a layer of newspaper put into the washing basket to cause a wicking effect. I found that at least 4 to 5 layers of newspaper thick was a good number. Once the newspaper has been wrapped around the top and the basket placed into the wheelie bin, it is ready to go back. On the bottom of the chamber floor, I've drawn a square, and that gives me a good alignment. As you can see, the bin is lined up in the square, and when you look up, it should line perfectly with the hole above. Throughout the emptying into the compost and when lining the rubbish bin to go back into the chamber, give everything a good spray with a mist of the EM bacteria. This will help get the bacteria to multiply as soon as it's in the composter. There we go. It's all set and ready to go.